Today I have an incredible health fact to relate to you. They are high in sad numbers. In the UK, there's a 20-year gap between the rich and poor in terms of life expectancy. In the United States, the gap can go as wide as 20 as well, right? It's already between the 1% and between the rest of people in the country, it's 15 years. But often within a big city, that gap can go to 30 years because inequality becomes greater in a great city like New York City. If you go to the poorer people who are homeless people versus the richest people, the gap will be much more profound, going to even 30 or 40 years of difference in life expectancy. I did not know this data before. I'm wearing a Whoop in my arm, that little band that tracks your sleep, your heart rate, and all of that. Whenever I have any emotional stress at all, like for instance, my grandfather is sick, and so I'm very concerned because my mother's having to take care of him and so on and so forth. And then the caretaker got here, and then I was much calmer. So in the previous day, I had like 120 BPM just sitting down due to the stress. But today I went for a run and the caretaker arrived and my stress went to 41 BPM. I even hit a low of 34 BPM, which is absurdly low. It's athletic low, which shows what is my heart's absolutely lowest base rate. But even during physical exercise, sometimes it doesn't get as high as 120. But if I'm stressed, just sitting down, I can go to 120. So the fact that a lot of these people live less, the poorest people, and I don't have that good advantages, I'm just fine, I scrape by, as I imagine many of you who are watching me do. But the people who are homeless or the people who have real financial difficulties and troubles, their chronic stress never ceases. Their heart is constantly in overdrive as they're sitting on the bus and it takes them 3 hours to get to their job that day. And they're just sitting there in their commute and they're hating their lives and hating themselves and staring into a wall and just wondering when they're going to get there, and anxiety and anticipation that's going to destroy their lifespan completely. And so that's why you see that gap. Stress, emotional problems, relational problems, the inability to exercise, inability to sleep properly. I mean, controlling our emotions is essential. Practicing detachment, meditation is essential. Praying and trying to get in touch with God or with a higher power that makes our concerns feel very small so that we can actually learn to slightly and carefully move away from them, not trigger fight or flight, not trigger an understanding that we're going to have to go into combat, and instead say there's going to be no combat necessary, no physical combat necessary, it's okay. Because whenever we go into trouble due to the fact that we are evolved animals from the jungle, from the forest, we were very used to, whenever there was trouble, we needed to go into physical combat with animals, with other people in order to gather and get resources. But that's not how modern society works. Modern society does not require you to go into combat in order to get resources. In fact, if you go into combat, very often you lose resources because you'll actually be arrested. Because there's something such as a police force, which did not used to exist back in the day. There's no such thing as a police force. Today there is a police force. So if you go into combat, it could actually hurt your access to resources. And in the past, very rarely it could. Of course, it was risky, it was dangerous, but you had no choice. And there was going to be no police force either to punish you if you won the combat. If you won, you won. There's going to be no police force to punish you. And if you lost, there's going to be no police force to save you. And so it was very much necessary for us to be agitated at every minor occurrence, and every resource was extracted through conflict, physical conflict, taking it from you. Nowadays, our society is very much different from that. Instead, we use leverage mechanisms in order to trigger the police force to do the action for us. We ought not to do any action, we just trigger the police force. So you make a person sign a contract, and if they don't pay you, you just trigger the police force. You ought to get a payment in order to go get your food, and you go to the supermarket and you pay for your food because, well, it's a policed exchange. If the supermarket takes your food, takes your money, doesn't give you food, you trigger the police force. If you take their food and do not give them money, they trigger the police force. So everything is done by triggers to the police force rather than to you. And so our triggering of ourselves as if we were the police force neglects the existence of police force, because our evolution hasn't been able to adapt to that reality very easily. And so we are very constantly stressed in fight or flight mode, even though very rarely we're going to engage in combat at all. So that's a misunderstanding that our autonomic nervous system fails to grasp, and in failing to grasp it, it brings us trouble in terms of our heart issues, which we should do our best to avoid. Anyways, friends, I appreciate you having watched this. I appreciate you here. I hope that you support my channel by subscribing, leaving a like, leaving a comment down below. I hope that you enjoyed my health covering in this channel, in this video today. And I'll be sure to see you next time. Take it easy, peace, and have a blessed day.